Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
Hi Vince.
Hey Cap.
How's it going?
Oh, not bad.
That's good. Today we're going to talk about a very serious topic. We're going to talk about violence.
Ooh, I love violence.
We're going to talk about, but seriously, we're going to talk about violence on film and specifically television, and we're going to be talking about how it relates to children and kids being desensitized to violence and that sort of thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because Browncoat Eric the other day did a video on this, and I thought he had a very interesting idea about once again, desensitization and that sort of thing with kids and violent kid shows. And I wanted to share that and then use that as a springboard for a conversation.
You know, I've never seen a TV show beat up a kid.
Yeah, it's a serious problem, really. It's, I don't know.
TV shows just run around in gangs. You got Gilligan's Island and Pee Wee Herman jumping around beating up children. Anyway, moving
But seriously. No. So Browncoat Eric started talking about Power Rangers, and he used that as his main example, and he said that that he has a theory for why Power Rangers is simply a show with very little plot and just a lot of mindless violence. And he said basically his idea is that the reason that is because people are too afraid of kids seeing violence on television, and that's why it's become nothing but mindless violence. Now, at first I was like, I don't get it. What do you mean? His explanation is this. It isn't simply that there's a lot of violence in kid shows. It's that there's a lot of violence in kid shows, and nobody ever has to pay for anything. That there's never any consequences for anybody's actions in these sorts of shows. And in Power Rangers, the heroes show up and they fight a bunch of monsters and they go home. And that's what happens. Are you aware that in the Japanese version of Power Rangers, that in the end of the Green Ranger saga, the Green Ranger dies?
Oh.
Doesn't happen in American kid shows very often, right? People don't die. We don't see consequences for bad actions. And his point is that it isn't the violence that's the problem. It's that what he's saying is, if we were to show violence in kid shows and then show why that's a problem, then it wouldn't be a problem that kids are seeing violence in television.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Consequences for your actions. I would argue that part of the important thing is who is committing the violence and what are they committing it against.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people really get afraid of,
mm-hmm.
as to why violence is so bad. I mean, you have a Power Ranger kicking a putty in the face. That brings to question, is a putty human?
Yeah.
And should we care whether or not a Power Ranger just kicked a putty?
Yeah, and that's why I never really thought it was that big of a problem. You know what I mean? I never thought, you know, Power Rangers was the sort of thing that made kids really violent. And you know, there's been research into this, and there's been studies and stuff. And some people think that, and some people back in the day, you know, really thought that was a huge problem. And some people thought, no, that's silly. That's not really the issue. But I don't think it's just seeing people do violence on TV makes kids want to do the violence. I think it's first of all glorifying that violence, and second of all not showing that it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're doing drugs and everybody's, or like you, the viewer, are doing drugs. No, if a character's doing drugs and we don't see any consequences, we don't see the inevitable toothlessness and homelessness of being a crystal meth addict, then suddenly we go, well, hey, maybe I want to try crystal meth.
What's wrong with that? Yeah. Why is that a problem?
And that's why parents should talk to their kids.
Now, I personally think that these days, and not just in kid shows, but especially getting into movies and even into PG-13 films, which, you know, a lot of parents will let kids see, of course. I think that these days, even more so than the 90s, it isn't that there's too much violence. I think that the violence is too violent very often. You know what I mean? I think we show things that we just don't need to show. I think that.
Crossing into the realm of ultra-violence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying that's necessarily glorifying violence. and very often it's done just because we're trying to show the real world, so we do this. I think for me it's just not entertaining. You know what I mean? I just don't want to know. And I think that can though seriously desensitize kids to violence. If they see, you know, if people are seeing heads exploding and you know, knives going through people's necks.
You know,
yes, that's a Watchmen reference.
Well, you said heads exploding. I thought of scanners. So
yeah, sure.
But I think people get so riled up over violence.
Yeah.
And Browncoat Eric, or Eric, as I like to call him, brings up a good point about the consequences of violence, because when you're watching Looney Tunes, the characters never seem to get hurt, or they're only hurt for a limited period of time, and that's supposed to be funny to us. Well, truth be told, I never really liked Looney Tunes, but
oh, really?
That's just me.
Oh, that's sad. I'm depressed by that.
I like Daffy Duck, but...
Daffy Duck was my least favorite in a lot of ways.
I like Daffy Duck on his solo adventures. When you put Daffy next to Bugs, Daffy was irritating and arrogant. But
you can't not like Marvin the Martian.
I liked his voice.
Okay, all right. Anyway, moving on.
But cartoon violence we don't really see any result. There's no blood. There's no death. Meanwhile, when you watch something that's ultra-violence, you see the blood. You see the consequences.
Right.
Somebody gets hurt. Somebody dies.
Right.
I mean...
Yeah, but the problem is, sometimes somebody will... Yeah, but that's not necessarily consequences, right? If it's the bad guy who dies, and then the good guy goes home and makes a martini and watches television, then you're saying that's okay. And you're also saying that the blood and the violence is not only okay, but it's also cool and fun to watch. Mm-hmm. It depends on who is the one getting hurt, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even if you look at horror movies, to put a little spin on this, not horror movies specifically, but slasher movies specifically, the one who always has violence done unto them are the good guys, and they all die. But, well, all but one, the final girl, this trend. But,
although I'll say very often in slasher, we've done our bit on slasher films,
well,
but I think very often in those, the air quote good guys are the ones who die, except that they're usually not very sympathetic. So in my mind, they're not the good guys. I want them to die, and very often the girl who lives at the end is either the most sympathetic, or we're supposed to think she is, even if she's not.
You know, which brings me to my next point.
Okay.
Yeah. We almost have the surrogate life through the slasher himself, where we will impose our ideas into this guy's ultimate freedom, where we watch him mutilate people. I mean, how often are you standing in line behind somebody at the store and go, oh, I hate this guy? Well, it'd be so much easier just to be Jason and put a machete through the guy's head.
I don't get slasher films in a lot of horror films because it's not the protagonist we remember, it's the bad guys. Mm. And so, you know, if you were to walk up to a person and say, who is the main character in Friday the 13th?
They'd say Jason.
Yeah, and I'd be like, well, he's not the protagonist. Mm. He's the the antagonist can't be the main character. But they make they make the main characters completely superfluous, very very often.
Oh yeah. And at the end, the bad guy, or the main whatever, Jason doesn't die. None of these guys ever die, so we never even see consequences for the killers.
No, not at all. Usually it's like, although I don't think those movies are ever trying to make a point.
Well, usually, no. Some do.
In fact, the biggest exception I can think of is Child's Play, where it really is the same protagonist every film. It's always that kid.
You know, I never liked Child's Play. I may have just alienated about 90% of the horror crowd.
No, I bet you didn't either. I don't know. I liked things about it. But then again, you know, I don't love that genre anyway. So
I love the guy that voices Chucky.
Yeah.
Brad Dourif.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
Brad Dourif is cool, but anyway,
back to topic.
Kind of just went all over the place, didn't we? You know, Batman the Animated Series is, of course, considered one of the best animated series ever made, and it's considered to be the thing that helped to make Batman more realistic and more serious. And yet, you know, we got guns in that series, but the Joker doesn't kill people.
True.
Isn't that interesting? And I saw an interview with help me out.
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill, thank you. Where's my brain? I saw an interview with Mark Hamill where he was like, yeah, they wouldn't, you know, let us have the Joker kill people, but he would like use the Joker gas and give people those giant scary smiles, which was kind of worse.
It is kind of worse because I figured they were dead. They're sitting there lifeless with a smile on their face.
And I think the idea is that they are supposed to be dead, but I mean, you never know, and so in a way, you've got this psychotic killer in a show that never actually kills anyone.
And they do have people come back from that. I believe they have somebody in the hospital who's not
Batman came back from it.
Oh yeah.
They had Batman in the Laughing Fish that Batman gets hit with it, and yeah.
The Laughing Fish.
It's a